U.S. Supreme Court issued major decisions on January 6 riots case and on two other issues. Analyst says Biden didn't perform well. Good morning. Welcome to Amir 5858. I'm Amir. I am thankful to all international news resources and my team. Following are the news which have been reported by American, European, Canadian, Australian, Asian, and African channels and AP, AFP, and Reuters news agencies. Now the headlines. In presidential debate, Iowa state and abortion. Police chief arrested in Uvalde, Texas. Elections are taking place in Iran for president. American pier on Gaza coast removed. Israel killed 11 people in Gaza today. Protection status for 300,000 Haiti living in America. Haiti is in turmoil for last 6 months. Stay of Boeing Starliner astronauts extended. On Wall Street, Dow Jones Industrial, S&P 500 and Nasdaq all fell down. Canadian politician says that Trudeau has to go. Brain implant in Canada. Tour de France has started. Now watch the channels.
Good evening, I'm Amna Navaz.
And I'm Jeff Bennett. On the News Hour tonight, the U.S. Supreme Court issues major decisions on obstruction charges against January 6th rioters, federal regulatory power, and homelessness.
Analysis of key moments and the fallout from last night's presidential debate. And
David Brooks and Kimberly Atkins Storr break down the latest political headlines. Welcome to the News Hour. With just 1 day left in its term, the U.S. Supreme Court issued a trio of major decisions today.
The justices upheld a law making it a crime for unhoused people to camp in public areas like parks, sidewalks, and plazas. They narrowed the scope of a law being used to prosecute the January 6 rioters and weakened the rulemaking powers of regulatory agencies. PBS News Weekend anchor John Yang reports on the Supreme Court for us. He's here now to break it all down. John, good to see you.
Good to see you.
So let's start with the case of Joseph Fisher. This is a man charged with 7 counts after storming the Capitol on January 6th.
In the day's other headlines, Iowa's Supreme Court is letting a law go into effect that bans most abortions after about 6 weeks of pregnancy. The decision removes a lower court's temporary block on the measure, which was passed with only Republican support last year. There are exceptions for rape, incest, or if the pregnancy endangers the life of the mother. 14 states now have near total abortion bans, and 3 others ban abortions after 6 weeks. The former police chief for schools in Uvalde, Texas, failed to identify the 2022 attack at Robb Elementary School as an active shooting. That's according to an indictment unsealed today. Pete Arredondo was arrested and released last night. He faces 10 felony counts of abandoning or endangering a child. The indictment said Arredondo slowed down the response when he directed law enforcement officers to evacuate the wing before confronting the shooter. Security footage shows officers retreating as gunfire could be heard down the hall. 19 students and 2 teachers were killed. In Iran, voters cast their ballots today for a new president. The snap elections were called to replace the late president Ibrahim Raisi, who died in a helicopter crash last month. Voters are choosing from a tightly controlled group of 4 candidates loyal to Iran's supreme leader at a time of growing frustration. But voters are still making their voices heard.
Unfortunately, some people think that the president has already been selected, but we must vote. If I don't vote, someone else would vote, and the candidate who is not the best might be elected, unfortunately. That would harm the Iranian nation.
A final result is expected this weekend. If no candidate receives a clear majority, the top 2 finishers will advance to a runoff on July 5th. The Pentagon announced today that the temporary pier it built off Gaza has been removed once again amid rough seas and provided no timeline for its return. The pier started operating in May to increase aid deliveries. Just days later, it was damaged by rough seas and taken down for repairs. The pier was reinstalled earlier this month, but humanitarian groups have since suspended distributions, citing security concerns. That's left supplies piling up at a distribution point on the beach. The Pentagon official said today that resuming pier operations could depend on freeing up that backlog.
If there's not enough room on the marshalling yard, then it doesn't make sense to put our men and women out there when there's nothing to move. But we do need to see that marshalling yard open up to allow for aid groups to continue that distribution so that we can get more aid in.
Meantime, the IDF released a video today of tanks pushing further into northern Gaza and troops operating in the southern city of Rafah. Palestinian officials say tank shelling there killed at least 11 people today. The Biden administration will expand temporary protected status to more than 300,000 Haitians already living in the U.S. The program gives work permits and protections from deportation to those fleeing conflict or disasters. The designation lasts 6 to 18 months and can be extended. More than 260,000 Haitians are already in the U.S. under the program. Ongoing gang and criminal activity has left Haiti increasingly dangerous. The UN says more than 5 million Haitians are facing severe food insecurity, and more than 500,000 have been displaced. NASA said today that the first 2 astronauts to travel aboard Boeing's Starliner to the International Space Station will stay up there for a couple of weeks longer. Engineers will use that time to investigate the craft's thruster issues, which have already delayed their return trip multiple times.
Lots of cheering here in the room. Big hugs.
Veteran astronauts Butch Wilmore and Sonny Williams celebrated a successful docking with the ISS on June 6th. They were due to stay on board for only about a week. And on Wall Street today, the Dow Jones Industrial Average lost 45 points. The Nasdaq fell more than 120 points on the day. The S&P 500 also ended lower. Still to come on the NewsHour, Democratic Governor Tim Walz of Minnesota reacts to President Biden's debate performance and the fallout within the party. And we fact-check some of President Biden's and Mr. Trump's claims from the presidential debate.
This is the PBS News.
Welcome to Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, The War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman. In the Gaza Strip, at least 11 Palestinians were killed and 40 others wounded today when Israeli forces bombed al-Mawasi, an area sheltering displaced families near Gaza's southern city of Rafah. Separately, Gaza's Civil Defense Agency said 3 of its medics were killed and a dozen others wounded by Israeli airstrikes as they searched for survivors of Israel's assault on the Burej refugee camp. The attack on medical workers came as Israeli authorities continue to bar many Palestinians from leaving Gaza to seek medical treatment. This is Kamela Abu Quaid, mother to 5-year-old Fayez, who urgently needs treatment for cancer after lumps spread throughout his body. On Thursday, the boy finally granted permission to leave Gaza for treatment in Egypt, but his parents were not allowed to travel with him.
Why is there suffering like this? Are people's hearts blind? Are they blind or deaf that they don't hear or see? Have they lost their feelings? Is it okay for them to see us suffering like this? Do they not feel for these children? Malnourishment, lack of food, no capabilities, no treatments, no medication. There's no milk, there's nothing. There's nothing. Do they want to kill us slowly? Why?
The Biden administration is defending the pace of its arms shipments to Israel after Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu accused the U.S. of slow-rolling military assistance. This week, the White House boasted it supplied Israel with $6.5 billion in military aid since last October. The disclosure came as senior U.S. officials held talks with an Israel delegation headed by Israeli Defense Minister Yoav Gallant, who on Wednesday told reporters in Washington, D.C., Israel is prepared to bomb Lebanon, quote, back to the Stone Age, unquote, unless Hezbollah halts cross-border attacks. On Wednesday, Gallant was confronted by a peace activist with Code Pink after meeting with key members of Congress on Capitol Hill.
Gallant, you are a war criminal! How dare you enter our city and our country? You are a war criminal! You have literally killed thousands of Palestinians carrying out the genocide in Palestine! Shame on you, and shame on you for letting them in here! Shame on all of you for protecting a war criminal!
In more news from Capitol Hill, lawmakers have barred the U.S. State Department from citing death toll figures provided by Gaza Ministry of Health ahead of Thursday's vote. Congress's lone Palestinian-American lawmaker, Democrat Rashida Tlaib of Michigan, read into the congressional record the toll of Palestinians killed during Israel's assault on Gaza, more than 37,700 dead, 50
Tonight, the fallout from that debate showdown as President Biden looks to turn the page after his unsteady performance. Joe Biden and Donald Trump back on the trail after that contentious debate. The president looking for a reset after his struggles on stage raise alarm among Democrats. Some now calling for him to be replaced on the ticket. Mr. Biden in North Carolina in front of a raucous crowd admitting he doesn't debate as well as he used to, but still vowing to win. Former President Trump claiming victory during a rally in Virginia, but under fire for his repeated falsehoods on the debate stage. Our political team breaking it all down tonight. Also this evening, the major rulings from the Supreme Court, including one involving charges against January 6th defendants, another overturning a 40-year-old precedent long targeted by conservatives, and what the court said about a law that could result in homeless people being arrested. Severe storm striking Florida, powerful winds flipping over a vehicle, and the new tropical depression we're tracking. New details in the indictment over the botched police response to the Uvalde school shooting. And let the battle begin. Simone Biles and more top U.S. gymnasts competing this weekend to punch their tickets to Paris.
This is NBC Nightly News with Lester Holt.
Good evening and welcome. President
On this Friday night, U.S. Democrats panicked. The alarming concerns over what's being called President Joe Biden's debate disaster.
Everything we have to do with,
what it could mean for his fight for the White House. Then, the questions about Canada's leader.
Will you stay on as leader?
The politicians past and present saying Justin Trudeau needs to go. Iran's election. The reformist who's setting himself apart and could become president. Plus, medical first.
It looks very good, so we're super happy.
The breakthrough brain implant changing the life of this teenager with epilepsy.
Global National. Reporting tonight, Carolyn Jarvis.
Good evening, and thanks for joining us. U.S. President Joe Biden is trying to turn the page today after what many are calling a disastrous night on one of the biggest and most important stages in the world. In the first debate of the 2024 presidential race, Joe Biden hoped to make the case that his opponent, Donald Trump, was unfit to return to the White House. Instead, he reignited questions over his own fitness for a second term in office. His answers were marked with stumbles and awkward pauses in what some are calling the worst debate performance in U.S. history. Have a listen.
Everything we have to do with, look, if we finally beat Medicare.
Thank you, President Biden. President Trump?
Well, he's right. He did beat Medicare. He beat it to death.
Despite Trump's felony conviction and repeated lies, the focus today is on the sitting president. Jackson Prosco has our top story tonight.
With his campaign thrust into crisis, Joe Biden tried to tame the panic.
I don't debate.
Time and insights tonight.
Thank you.
The U.S. Supreme Court will deliver its highly anticipated ruling Monday over whether Trump is immune to criminal prosecution for his actions during his time in office. In the meantime, the court delivered some major rulings today, including one which involves charges against January 6th rioters. In a 6-3 decision, the court ruled in favor of alleged rioter Joseph Fisher, throwing out the Justice Department's obstruction charge against him. The ruling could impact hundreds of other January 6th cases, including one against Trump. The Supreme Court also ruled 6-3 that American cities have the right to enforce bans on homeless people camping outside in public spaces. The decision sides with the Oregon city of Grants Pass over a lawsuit by 3 homeless people which argued the city's penalties were unconstitutional. This reverses a lower court ruling. The Supreme Court's conservative majority opinion said the Constitution does not authorize federal judges to dictate this nation's homelessness policy. Back in Canada, there are doubts over our leader's future after Trudeau's Liberals lost a stronghold to the Conservatives in a by-election earlier this week. One Liberal backbencher is indicating he's had enough. New Brunswick MP Wayne Long wrote an open letter to the Liberal caucus calling for Trudeau's resignation. David Aitken looks at who's calling for Trudeau to stand aside and who's standing by him.
Our incredible, hardest working individual that we know, the Honorable.
A party fundraiser with a wounded leader doing his best to pump up the troops.
We have Pierre Poilievre and the Conservatives who've decided that the way they get to win is to make people even angry.
It will play a key role in Trudeau's political future. And a new poll done exclusively for Global News shows the majority of Canadians aren't feeling good about the state of the country. That's coming up later on Global National. Lieutenant General Jenny Carignan has been selected as Canada's next Chief of the Defence Staff, making her the first woman to serve as our military's top commander. Carignan was the military's Chief of Professional Conduct and Culture until now. She's had multiple deployments to war zones, including command positions in Afghanistan and Iraq. Carignan will take over from General Wayne Eyre, who has been in the role since 2021. Defence Minister Bill Blair has announced the construction of a new fleet of naval warships at a Halifax shipyard to boost Canada's defence capabilities.
It is the largest shipbuilding initiative that Canada has undertaken since the Second World War. It's a historic investment in the Canadian Armed Forces and in Canada's security.
The roughly $60 billion project is expected to deliver 15 new warships by 2050. Officially designated River-class destroyers, the 8,000 metric ton vessels will carry advanced radar and underwater sensors to detect submarines. The mayor of Calgary is pleading with residents to conserve water after the city experienced its biggest jump in water use since damage to a water main cut off supply 3 weeks ago.
We are not out of the woods yet because the job is not done yet. The feeder main that broke is not back online yet. For those that think the conclusion of the repairs was the all clear for regular water usage, it was not.
The mayor says water still needs to be flushed through the repaired pipe and water quality testing completed, work that's expected to happen this weekend before service can be restored to regular levels. Iranians head to the polls. Coming up, the presidential candidate who's been called a potential game changer. Just a few weeks after experiencing a deadly heat wave, people in India's capital woke up to this. Torrential rain inundated the city of 20 million. Delhi received more rain in one day than it normally gets in the entire month. The extreme weather is causing major traffic issues, and at the international airport made a section of roof buckle, killing one person. There's a major presidential election taking place in Iran today. The snap vote was called after the sudden death of the former president in a helicopter crash last month. What makes this election different is that a little-known reformist candidate, one who's calling for closer relations with the West, actually has a chance of winning. But that doesn't mean the hardline Iranian regime is going anywhere. Redmond Shannon reports.
The most powerful man in Iran voting for the second most powerful man in Iran. Ayatollah Khamenei casts his vote for president after the death of Ibrahim Raisi in May's helicopter crash. The supreme leader said the longevity and stability of the Islamic Republic depends on participation. That was something lacking from recent elections, which saw turnouts below 50%, part apathy, part boycott, that all candidates are pre-approved by the regime. 3 of the 4 candidates are seen as conservatives, like Raisi. 1 is more moderate, backed by the reformist faction. Masoud Pezeshkian said he wants friendly relations with all nations, except Israel. The heart surgeon and former health minister also said there should be no inhuman behavior towards women. a reference to the crackdown against those protesting the mandatory wearing of headscarves following the killing of Masa Amini in police custody 2 years ago.
I think the best way of putting presidency is somebody who seeks to persuade the supreme media and other bodies to take important decisions.
Iran analyst Siavush Ranjbar Daemi says alongside the economy, internet speed and access to blocked apps like Instagram are also election issues.
Iran has its fair share of small businesses and individual people that were applying their trade on Instagram that was filtered, and that caused a lot of problems.
If no candidate gets 50% of the vote, there will be a runoff next Friday. Redmond Shannon, Global News, London.
Sinking national pride ahead. Why so many Canadians say the country is in need of a boost. Tonight marks the start of the Canada Day long weekend, but a new poll done exclusively for Global News shows many Canadians are not necessarily in the mood to celebrate. National pride has plummeted. Taria Isri breaks down the details and what's behind the low morale.
Preparations are underway in Ottawa for the country's biggest Canada Day celebration. But even the best party planner would have a hard time changing the national mood.
It's going to take a long time to get back where we were before.
An Ipsos poll done for Global News found many Canadians think the country needs fixing.
After 9 years of this Prime Minister, everything is broken. Everything's broken. Everything feels broken. Everything feels broken.
70% of Canadians polled agree Canada is broken. And the younger you are, the more likely it is you'll believe that. 78% of Canadians between 18 and 34 share that view.
He's capturing a mood. It's not something that Pierre Poilievre has created.
Pierre Poilievre is going around saying that Canada's broken. He's doing that for his own narrow interests.
Poilievre has dominated the polls for more than a year. And this week, his party breached the walls of a Liberal fortress, winning the Toronto St. Paul's by-election.
There is a lot of discomfort, heated anger, certainly frustration in not just Canada, but a number of countries right now. And the primary reason for that is inflation.
In Montreal, this year's Canada Day parade was cancelled because of red tape and a lack of funding. To Ipsos, it's just one more example contributing to an overwhelming sense of pessimism in the country, driven in large part by economic uncertainty.
I think the government's time for a change, new ideas, new way of doing stuff right now.
For others, there's still lots to celebrate.
There's always conflict, and there's always things that will be going on in the world that we don't necessarily have as much control over as we'd like, but I love this country.
Which is about to mark its 157th birthday, for better or worse. Taria Isri, Global News, Montreal.
Medical miracle. Next, a new device that could transform the lives of people living with epilepsy. Princess Anne is back home tonight after 5 days in hospital. King Charles's sister was treated for a head injury and concussion that doctors say were consistent with being struck by a horse's head or legs. The 73-year-old was scheduled to arrive in Canada this weekend, but that trip has been postponed. A British teenager has made medical history. Oren Nolson once experienced up to 300 seizures a day, but that number has dropped dramatically thanks to a revolutionary brain implant. Nisu Garcha reports.
Would I try to fix that?
His doctors are calling it a medical milestone. Oren Nolson has become what they say is the world's first child to undergo a groundbreaking procedure. A neurostimulator has been implanted directly into the 13-year-old skull to combat severe epilepsy.
Resuscitating your child is traumatic and frightening.
His mother says every moment of Oren's life has been overshadowed by epilepsy, his childhood held captive by relentless seizures up to 300 times a day.
It's robbed him of all of his childhood so far.
His doctors say the device stimulates the thalamus, intercepting the brain's electrical signals to reduce seizures by up to 80%. It's hoped the results will help determine whether it's an effective treatment for epilepsy.
If we're able to bring this treatment in and make it available to more children, that really has an opportunity to revolutionise their lives and to allow them to get their childhood back.
A similar procedure has been used in Canada. A Toronto teen was the first person in this country to get a responsive neurostimulator last year. Doctors here say the UK technology is promising.
This is a different type of neuromodulation or a different type of brain stimulator for epilepsy. A deep brain stimulator, which is what's being described in the story out of the UK, is actually not implanted in the specific part of the brain that causes seizures in that specific individual, but it's implanted in a part of the brain called the thalamus.
It looks very good, so we're super happy.
Oren's mother says it's been 7 months since the operation and his life has been transformed.
Yeah. Oren is starting to re-emerge. I feel like I'm getting my child back a little bit by bit.
She hopes this will bring the family's 10-year battle against his treatment-resistant epilepsy to an end. Neetu Garcha, Global News, Vancouver.
And that is Global National for this Friday night. I'm Carolyn Jarvis. Tonight's Your Canada is the South Saskatchewan River in Saskatoon. We love seeing Your Canada. Please email your photos to viewers at Global.
Tonight, President Biden's first comments after struggling on the debate stage against Donald Trump. The Supreme Court ruling potentially affecting hundreds of January 6 rioters and severe storms threatening record holiday travel. First, President Biden, less than 24 hours after his poor debate performance, fired up on stage in North Carolina.
When you get knocked down, you get back up.
A stark contrast to last night. Today, President Biden trying to reassure voters, acknowledging his age, admitting he doesn't debate as well as he used to. Top Democrats, including former President Obama, rallying behind him. Donald Trump criticized for repeated false statements, taking a victory lap in Virginia, seizing on Biden's rocky night. Rachel Scott with the fallout. Also tonight, the Supreme Court ruling, potentially affecting hundreds of people prosecuted after the January 6th attack on the U.S. Capitol. What the ruling might mean for the special counsel's case against former President Trump as we await the decision on presidential immunity. Terry Moran at the Supreme Court. The images coming in, first responders on the scene of a horrific crash outside New York City, the car slamming into a building. The former Uvalde School District Police Chief indicted on child endangerment. Charges linked to the deadly mass shooting at Robb Elementary. A second officer now under arrest, Maria Villarreal in Texas. A shark attack reported off Florida. The victim bitten on the arm and taken to the hospital. Severe storms on the move this weekend from Colorado to the Northeast. Heavy rain, damaging winds, and hail from Washington, D.C. to Philadelphia, New York to Boston. The system threatening the start of what could be record holiday travel. A Southwest flight from Portland, Maine to Baltimore taking off from a closed runway. The FAA now investigating. Boeing's troubled Starliner now docked indefinitely at the International Space Station. What the company is saying about returning the spacecraft and its 2 astronauts back to Earth. And America Strong tonight, the surprise send-off for a beloved teacher. The students making sure she retires in style.
From ABC News World Headquarters in New York.
It's amazing how 90 minutes can change the course of humanity. Last night, history changed as soon as 2 men walked onto a stage.
Welcome, the 46th President of the United States, Joe Biden. And please welcome the 45th President of the United States, Donald Trump.
Biden didn't look like a guy who'd been resting at Camp David pounding lasagna for a week. And 13 minutes in, the debate was officially over.
Making sure that we're able to make every single solitary person eligible for what I've been able to do with the COVID. Excuse me, with dealing with everything we have to do with. Look, if we finally beat Medicare.
Thank you, President Biden. President Trump.
Well, he's right. He did beat Medicare. He beat it to death.
Biden did the one thing he couldn't afford to do. And he did it at the start of the debate, when everyone was watching. Democrats across the country began to panic. Biden sounded hoarse, looked pale and exhausted, was babbling nonsense. And it got worse.
I'm going to continue to move until we get the total ban on the total initiative relative to what we can do with more Border Patrol and more asylum officers.
President Trump?
I really don't know what he said at the end of that sentence. I don't think he knows what he said either.
Biden staring slack-jawed and confused while Trump pounded his points across was one thing. But when Trump paused, was disciplined, when his mic was muted, that's hard to beat. Trump didn't flinch an inch when Biden slandered him with hoaxes. But the minute he brought up his measurements, golf game, and sex life, it was a different story.
You have the morals of an alley cat.
Do you answer?
I didn't have sex with a porn star.
You can see he is 6'5" and only 223 pounds, or 235 pounds. Well, you said 6'4", 200. Well, anyway, that's what you're. Anyway.
I just won 2 club championships, not even senior. 2 regular club championships. To do that, you have to be quite smart, and you have to be able to hit the ball a long way, and I do it. He doesn't do it.
Look, I'd be happy to have a driving contest now. I got my handicap, which when I was vice president, down to a 6. And by the way, I told you before, I'm happy to play golf if you carry your own bag. Think you can do it?
That's the biggest line. He's a 6 handicap of all.
I was an 8 handicap.
Yeah.
8.
I've seen you swing. I know you swing.
Yeah,
let's not act like children.
President Trump, we're going to...
Let's not act like children.
We pulled the tape, and with that swing, there's no way he's a 6 handicap. As Gutfeld said, maybe Biden thought he was being asked how many handicaps he has. 6. I have 6. After the longest drive debate, the both called each other for the next 20 minutes. The worst president in history. Watch.
His presidency, he's without question the worst president, the worst presidency in the history of our country.
Worst president in history. 159 presidential scholars voted him the worst president in the history of the United States of America.
They can't stand him. They think he's the worst commander-in-chief.
The idea that we're talking about worst presidents, I wasn't joking. Look it up or go online. Presidential historians, they've had meetings and they voted. They said he was the worst in all of American history.
He's the worst president. He just said about me because I said it. But look, he's the worst president in the history of our country.
We don't need historians to tell us who's the worst. We were around for both. And Trump was dialed in on creating that contrast, anchoring his entire presentation on the border.
We are living right now in a rat's nest. They're killing our people in New York, in California, in every state in the union, because we don't have borders anymore. People are coming in and they're killing our citizens at a level that we've never seen. We call it migrant crime. I call it Biden migrant crime. They're living in luxury hotels in New York City and other places. Our veterans are on the street. They're dying because he doesn't care about our veterans. He doesn't care. He doesn't like the military at all. And he doesn't care about our veterans. Did you fire anybody that allowed our country to be destroyed? Joe, our country is being destroyed as you and I sit up here and waste a lot of time on this debate. This shouldn't be a debate.
Trump constantly pivoted back to voters' top issues, the economy and illegal immigration. The former president even fought to withdraw on abortion and January 6th. Those are the 2 pillars of the Biden campaign. And Biden never scored. He couldn't even leave the debate stage without help from a doctor. Jill escorting him down a 6-inch step like they were descending Mount Kilimanjaro. It was such a catastrophic performance. The emotion I felt was pity. After he choked at minute 13, it was like watching an old journeyman fighter in there with a champ, getting outclassed.
If starting the day with a multivitamin is part of your routine, you're not alone. Millions do so to improve health and keep illnesses at bay. But new research out of the U.S. suggests that might not be the case, and in some instances, these vitamins could have the opposite effect. CTV's Alison Bamford has been looking into this for us. Alison, what are the results?
Heather, definitely not what some might expect, considering how popular multivitamins are. This study set out to see if these vitamins actually help you live longer, and it turns out they don't.
Getting your vitamins from pills is not going to make you live longer. That doesn't mean there aren't ways to live longer, but they relate more to food, not pills.
The study looked at hundreds of thousands of generally healthy adults over a 20-year period, finding no evidence that multivitamins reduced their risk of death, and instead reported a 4% higher mortality risk in users compared to those who don't take a daily multivitamin.
Because multiple vitamins just throw a whole bunch of vitamins together, there can be some that they can actually be harmful to you if you're taking them in excess.
1 in 3 American adults take multivitamins to prevent disease, but Dr. Barnard, author of the study's commentary, says in many cases they aren't necessary and can overload a person's body with vitamins they don't need. And if you are going to take vitamins, it's better to take supplement ones you actually need, like B12 or vitamin D. There are benefits to taking a multivitamin for some. Dr. Barnard says the concoctions can help pregnant women, those with macular degeneration, and some evidence suggests a reduced risk in dementia late in life. Heather?
CTV's Alison Bamford, thank you.
Welcome back to Night Watch here on France 24. Our main stories this hour. Polls close in Iran for snap elections to replace President Ibrahim Raisi, who was killed in a helicopter crash last month. Of the 4 candidates, there's one lone reformist running in a bid to break through against a divided conservative field. Donald Trump and Joe Biden are straight back on the campaign trail after a disastrous showing by the incumbent in a presidential debate. Biden gave a fiery speech in South Carolina, insisting he's the right man for the job. Trump in Virginia claimed victory in the debate and again took aim at what he called Biden's gross incompetence. And the Tour de France gets underway this Saturday for the first time, starting off in Italy. Defending champion Jonas Vingegaard looking for a 3rd straight title in the world's greatest road cycling events. He'll be fighting off former champion Tadej Pogacar and Primož Roglič of Slovenia. Welcome along. We begin in Iran, where early results have begun to come in for snap presidential polls to choose the successor to Ibrahim Raisi, who died in a helicopter crash last month. With around 6 million votes counted, reports from Iran's Interior Ministry show 2 men emerging as early leaders, the conservative Saeed Jalili, and then something of a surprise, the sole reformist, Masoud Pezeshkian. Turnout has reportedly been low. Authorities had urged voters to come out in high numbers after a record low participation in parliamentary elections earlier this year. Nick Rushworth takes us through Friday's polling.
Among the first to vote in Friday's snap election in Iran, the country's 85-year-old supreme leader, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, who has final say on all matters of state.
The longevity, stability, reputation, and honor of the Islamic Republic depends on the people's participation.
The ballot comes after the death of ultra-conservative President Ibrahim Raisi in a helicopter crash last month and takes place amid heightened regional tensions. Among the major issues, the sanctions hit economy and curbs on political and social freedom, including women's rights.
I'm hoping that the situation will be better for women in Iran, and also I think some of the policies have to be changed, and I hope that the person I voted for could change them.
There are 4 candidates. Analysts are broadly describing the race as a 3-way contest between 2 hardliners, Parliament Speaker Mohammed Bagher Khalibaf and former nuclear negotiator Saeed Jalili, up against reformist candidate Masoud Pezeshkian, who has aligned himself with those seeking a return to the 2015 nuclear deal with world powers.
Comparing to the other candidates, he doesn't have the tainted, corrupt CV. But again, ordinary Iranians see all of them as part of the establishment, as part of a system that is aligned with what the supreme leader has to say at the end.
Early projections of results are expected by Saturday morning and official results by Sunday. If no candidate wins 50% of the vote, a second round will be held on the 5th of July.
Donald Trump and Joe Biden are straight back onto the campaign trail after a disastrous showing by the incumbent in the presidential debate. In contrast with his halting, rambling performance the night before, Biden gave a fiery, animated speech in Raleigh, South Carolina. The 81-year-old even joking about his age, but insisting that he is the right man for the job. Trump was in Chesapeake, Virginia, where he claimed victory in the debate and told his supporters that Biden's problem was not his age, but rather his gross incompetence. Take a listen.
I know I'm not a young man. State the obvious. I don't walk as easy as I used to. I don't speak as smooth as I used to. I don't debate as well as I used to. But I know what I do know. I know how to tell the truth.
It's not his age, it's his competence. He's not respected anywhere in the world. Our country is being laughed at all over the world. Biden is using the weaponization of his Justice Department, the FBI, local district attorneys and attorneys general to try and win an election against his political opponent. That happens to be me. Do you know who I am? Something that actually was unthinkable in our nation, but which is very common in third world countries or in banana republics.
Biden's team was in damage control mode after the debate, with his performance so bad it had Democrats openly wondering if they should change their candidate. And just in the past hours, the New York Times, one of the most influential US papers, in an editorial called for Biden to step aside. Larry Sabato, a political scientist at the University of Virginia, says Biden has a lot of work to do if he's to repair the damage.
Well, at first, it was so damaging that you could hardly find a senior Democrat or someone in high office who wasn't talking with lots of other people in high office or senior Democrats about how to remove Joe Biden as a nominee. It was quite a shock because people expected Biden to turn in a performance similar to the one he showed at the State of the Union address earlier in the year. Energetic, focused, the sorts of things that he needed to do in order to regain some momentum. It was shocking, I have to tell you. I was not expecting to see the Biden that I saw. I don't think I've ever seen the Biden that I saw last night. However, he recovered quickly. He did give a very good speech today, and he's going to have to do that day after day after day. There's damage here that he needs to recover, repair, and recover, and it's going to take some time. The lucky thing for him is the Democratic convention isn't until the latter part of August. Joe Biden and his immediate team and family have made very clear that he will not drop out. And under our system, unless the nominee withdraws before the convention, there is no way for the convention to replace him. So there's nothing that can be done other than trying to repair the image that Biden had hoped to project and hoped that he had had. That's really it. He's helped by Donald Trump because as he did last night in that debate, almost everything he said was a lie. It was a big lie or a little lie or something in between, but it was a lie.
Next to the Middle East, where as Israel continues its operations in Gaza, tensions on the northern border with Lebanon have ramped up another notch after around 25 rockets were launched on Friday. Israel's military said it bombarded the source of rocket fire in southern Lebanon, and this, the latest incident, stoking fears of another all-out war between Israel and Lebanon's Islamist group Hezbollah. Defense Minister Yoav Gallant warned the Iran-backed militants that Israel was ready for war, even if it does not seek it.
The thing that gives us the flexibility to be able to discuss political solutions is that we have military solutions. Our alternatives are significant, and we are cultivating both, preparing the military force, defense, attack, and this can happen quickly. On the other hand, the political alternative is being prepared. It is always preferable. We're not looking for war, but we are ready for it.
The Bolivian general who led a failed coup attempt in La Paz has been charged with terrorism and participation in an armed uprising. Officials ordered General Juan José Zuniga, along with 2 other officers, to 6 months preventative detention. President Luis Arce accused the leader of Wednesday's coup of trying to take power for himself, and again denied that he had orchestrated the coup attempt himself. Russia's defense ministry says its troops have captured a village around 20 kilometers north of Bakhmut. This comes amid reports of Russian shelling near the front line in the east and northeast that killed at least 5 people in the Donetsk region. Russian attacks were also reported in Ukraine's northeastern Kharkiv region, including on a residential building. Take a look.
They are leaving with a heavy heart, hoping to return as quickly as possible. These evacuees in Kharkiv in Ukraine say they have no choice but to leave.
Every day there are explosions, so of course we follow the news. We love Kharkiv very much. We are worried, but I'm getting older. It's hard for me to do all of this alone.
A couple of days ago it exploded so hard that we had to lie down on the floor. Everything fell apart. My aunt was scared. She has 2 children. For now, let it calm down a bit, and then we'll go back.
Moscow launched a major ground assault against the Kharkiv region in May. The Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky, speaking in Brussels on Thursday, said European assistance has helped.
We are managing to bring security back to Kharkiv, one of the largest cities in Ukraine, security from Russian missiles. This is due to the elimination of Russian missile launchers near our border. Each of you knows how this became possible. And also we must protect Kharkiv and every other city in Ukraine from Russian guided bombs.
With the death toll continuing to rise, prospects for a peaceful settlement remain bleak. Zelensky says he's drawing up a comprehensive plan for how Kyiv believes the war with Russia should end. Ukraine has repeatedly said Russia must pull its troops out of its internationally recognized territory. Meanwhile, the Russian President Vladimir Putin is demanding Ukraine effectively capitulates by evacuating even more territory across its east and south.
Next up, Argentina's lower house of parliament has approved President Javier Milei's divisive economic overhaul bills. It's a much-needed victory for the self-declared anarcho-capitalist after months of bruising debate and protests. Milei hailed the approval as the greatest fiscal adjustment in the history of humanity. He now has the green light to declare a 1-year state of economic emergency, to disband federal agencies and privatize several public companies. Left-wing opponents have slammed parts of the legislation as a license to fire workers. Next up, the Tour de France gets underway this Saturday for the first time, starting in Italy. Defending champion Jonas Vingegaard is looking for a third straight title in the world's top road cycling event. He's expected to face challengers from former champion Tadej Pogacar with Primož Roglic and Tour newcomer Remco Evenepoel. Let's now take a look at some of the fans who are gearing up for the action in Florence ahead of the Grand Départ.
With the clock ticking down on Tour de France, the Tuscan city of Florence is buzzing with anticipation. It's the first time the race kicks off in Italy in its 121-year history.
I'm very happy about the fact that it's starting for the first time in Italy. It's allowed me to discover new things, so honestly, it's amazing. So far, the atmosphere has been great. I'm loving it.
I think that for cycling enthusiasts like us, it's very important to see the greatest cycling champions of the moment paired with a city that has history, culture and art and represents Italy on the world stage.
With 3,600 meters of elevation over 206 kilometers of racing, it's one of the toughest ever opening stages of the tournament. Heading east out of Florence, the first ascent is the toughest. The peloton will then pass through San Marino for the first time, before finishing on the Italian Riviera. The race director has said spectators can expect an action-packed 111th edition as four favourites battle it out for the yellow jersey. Belgian debutant Remco Evenepoel, Slovenian veteran Primož Roglic, defending champion Jonas Vingegaard, and his main challenger Tadej Pogacar.
Of course, I would have liked to have 2 or 3 more weeks to prepare for this race, but I think the shape is decent at least. I just wanted to try to fight to get to the Tour de France. That was my first goal. Now I'm here. That's a victory for me already.
The 2024 edition avoids Paris entirely, which is gearing up for the Olympic Games. It will instead end with an individual time trial from Monaco to Nice on July 21st.
Finally, with less than a month to go before the start of the Olympics, pollution levels in the Seine are still far higher than recommended for bathing. The river is scheduled to host some swimming events, but once more levels of enterococci and E. coli bacteria have been well above legal thresholds. E. coli concentrations almost 4 times higher than permitted. Water pollution levels spike in Paris in periods of heavy rain, which in recent weeks have also increased the flow of the river to around 6 times its seasonal average. That's it for the moment here on France 24. As ever, more news on our website, france24.com. Stay with us.
In Nairobi Mosque held the funeral of 19-year-old Ibrahim Kamau on Friday after he was shot during a protest on Tuesday against the government's since withdrawal proposed tax bill. Mourners paid their respect during the funeral service and then later carried the coffin through Nairobi streets. Protesters stormed Parliament on Tuesday and drew police fire in chaos that left several people dead, reportedly as many as 22. Police in Kenya's capital hurled tear gas Thursday to also break another anti-tax protesters who continue to gather despite President William Ruto's repudiation of unpopular tax legislation that prompted deadly unrest early in the week. The finance legislation has drawn fierce resistance from a Kenyan public reeling from higher costs of living, especially from younger protesters. The bill is yet to be amended in Parliament or totally withdrawn by the parliamentarians. As Mauritania heads for Saturday election, slavery still remains a bone of contention in a society that has emulated the practice over the years. An estimated 149,000 people are believed to be in modern slavery in Mauritania, where the population is less than 5 million, according to the 2023 Global Slavery Index.
La question de l'esclavage est une question très centrale.
Slavery is a central question in Mauritania, given the prevalence of slavery and its presence, given the status of slavery in society, the status of a slave, the status of a free man, and especially the status of the men who hold these slaves. It's ingrained in Mauritanian values, which is why slavery continues to plague Mauritania in such a massive way. Though President Ghazouani is widely expected to win the election, his main opposition, Biram Da Abeid, a black anti-slavery activist who was accused him of gross mismanagement of the country. The population is hungry. The population is thirsty. Unemployment has ruined the youth. That is why the youths have immigrated in the thousands or tens of thousands. Mauritania is no stranger to human rights abuse accusations, as it was the last country in the world to abolish slavery in 1981.
Palestinians fled from areas in Gaza City on Thursday after an Israeli evacuation order and heavy bombing. The Israeli military has ordered new evacuations from neighborhoods that were heavily targeted and largely emptied early in the war. The latest order applies to Shijaya and other neighborhoods. Missiles reached us, and here we fled. Their mothers and houses were struck on top of their owners. We do not know where to go. I swear we do not know where to go. First responders with Gaza Civil Defense, which is part of the Hamas-run government, said airstrikes hit 5 homes, killing at least 3 people and wounding another 6. It said rescuers were still digging through the rubble for survivors. They started calling us and asked us to evacuate from East Al-Tifa and East Al-Shijaya, and as you can see, we left there, and there were people trapped unable to leave. The martyrs from the morning were thrown away. Hundreds of thousands of people have remained in the north, even as Israeli troops have surrounded and largely isolated it.
Under fire from critics, Cameroon has just organised its second African Senior Athletics Championship. Nearly 800 athletes from all over the continent took part in this 23rd edition of the competition, which is a ticket to the Paris Olympics, despite difficulties at the start. We know that the African Championships were relocated from the first stadium, and frankly it was very hard for us to compete there, because there were holes and the track wasn't completely straight. But we were all in the same condition, so you had to fight. Athletes complained about the quality of some of the facilities. But these difficulties did not demoralize the Ivorian and Ugandan athletes who won gold medals in their disciplines in a virtually empty Depoma Stadium.
Actually, being the first time to compete in Africa Senior Championship, I'm really glad to go with a gold medal. I was really prepared for this and finally I've gone with a gold medal.
It was really difficult, but I told myself that everyone is in the same situation, so all I knew is that I wanted to come first. It wasn't until the last 2 days that the authorities mobilized to provide free transport for locals wanting to watch the competition. South Africa finished first with 19 medals, followed by Nigeria with 15 and Ethiopia with 10. The next edition will be in Ghana in 2026.
Wish for CNA is that it will transition from being a great regional channel to become an international channel. Congratulations, CNA.
This is Asia Now.
It's 11 a.m. in Singapore and Hong Kong, 8:30 in New Delhi, and 10 o'clock in Jakarta. I'm Rani Samtani. At this hour, from a severe heat wave to extreme downpours, several parts of New Delhi flooded after the Indian capital recorded its heaviest June rainfall in close to 90 years. Fresh airstrikes on northern Gaza killed dozens, including 3 medics, as Israel continues with its offensive in the besieged enclave. Palestinian officials accuse Israel of deliberately targeting civilian structures. And President Vladimir Putin seeks to bolster Russia's military arsenal. He hints at potentially resuming the production of previously banned nuclear-capable missiles. India's capital has been whiplashed by extreme weather. A heavy deluge is flooding New Delhi after weeks of a searing heat wave. Several parts of the city are now waterlogged amid record-breaking rainfall. The city recorded its highest 24-hour rainfall.
I don't think it's bad. It's terrible. Look at it. That's what I thought when I saw that ad. Todd and I have taken the red pill.
Bruin, Wednesday 8:30 on ABC TV and ABC iView.
A Sydney family is hospitalised with carbon monoxide bringing a barbecue indoors to stay warm. US President Joe Biden vows to remain in the race after his debate performance stirs panic among Democrats.
I don't debate as well as I used to. But I know what I do know. I know how to tell the truth.
Polls closed in the Snap-Iranian presidential election after voting hours were extended 3 times.
Thank you for watching and privilege of your time. This is Amir Shakil 5858. I am Amir Goodman. Have a good life.